Hello and thank you for tuning in. Welcome on to March's Northwest City Politics episode. I am your guest host, Lizzy, and today we are here today with Representative Huldah Momanyi-Hiltsley from Kisii, Kenya. She is a trailblazing American politician who made history in November 2024 by becoming the first Kenyan-born individual elected in a U.S. state legislature, representing District 38A in the Minnesota House of Representatives, serving Brooklyn Park and Osseo. Welcome, Representative Hiltsley.
Thank you so much, Lizzy, for having me. It's an honor to be a part of your show. You know, you being Kenyan is definitely a treat, so I've been looking forward to this show, and I think we're going to have a great time today. Yeah. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, thank you so much for even giving time to be here tonight. So without further ado, let's get started. So first question I have is, you are new in the session, and question I had is what legislation do you plan to introduce or support that will have direct impact in working families in Minnesota?
Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited to be a part of this very historical session, as you can only imagine. But I'm a fierce advocate for working families. I am committed to policies that ensures economic security and stability for our families. And so there's a couple of bills that I have personally authored, one of them being, you know, making sure we address the homelessness crisis that we have in this city, not only in my district, but also in the state of Minnesota. And so I'm championing that bill to continue providing resources and funding so that, you know, we prevent families from going into homelessness. If we could do that and provide stable, sustainable housing, equitable housing, I believe when a family has stable housing, everything is built around that. So I'm excited to champion that. And then also additional other bills that I am excited about that I'm chief author on, expanding our Brooklyn Park Community Center to accommodate, you know, all the different activities that the community, that reflect the diversity of this community. Because right now, you know, we have an ice rink, yes, that's great, but I am championing a bill that will expand it and make it a Northwestern athletic facility. So there's a lot of good things that we're doing at the Capitol, and specifically bills that I'm championing that target specifically this district and the state of Minnesota.
And that's amazing to hear, because just knowing Brooklyn Park and Osseo, there is a very high population of Africans and immigrant communities, and a lot of Kenyans, a lot of our people are in this city as well. So what policies are you advocating for that will impact African immigrants, such as access to jobs, education, and healthcare?
Yeah, yes, I am proud. I'm a proud African immigrant from Kenya. My family relocated to the United States when I was just 9 years old. That was about 30 plus years ago. So obviously this is home. I've grown up here. I went to Cooper High School. And you're right, you know, I am very honored to represent the most diverse, racially diverse district in the whole entire state of Minnesota.
Yes.
And a big percentage of that population is African immigrants. So this is little Africa. You know, we have little China, we have little Italy.
Yes.
Like, this is little Africa here in the Brooklyns, and I love it. So when we talk about, you know, policies specifically targeting African immigrants, you know, we look at, you know, the demographics of that population. You know, we see a lot of small businesses, you know, we see a lot of community-based organizations that are really, you know, targeting social services. And so I'm working with an organization called ACER. I think you're familiar with ACER. Yeah. And we're working on a bill to mobilize around workforce solutions, where we can provide resources to be able to provide training for small businesses that are, you know, concentrated in my district, to help those small businesses get access to equity to either expand or to even, you know, get some folks who have really amazing ideas to jumpstart their business as well. So I'm excited about that bill, and I'm also having conversations with, you know, a couple of other organizations around social services that really target the African immigrant community. And obviously right now, as you are aware, one of the biggest challenges that we are seeing at the moment, and we're dealing with, especially with what's coming from the federal government and the executive orders from the current administration, is immigration, right? That's a big big challenge that we are seeing within not only the African immigrant community, but the immigrant community in general, not only in the state of Minnesota, but in the whole entire U.S. Specifically in my district, we've had, cases where, there has been ICE raids. And so I have been working really hard with, a couple of key stakeholders, for example, our amazing Attorney General, Keith Allison, for example, our president from North Hennepin Community College, to talk about what do you need to do, the do's and don'ts of when it comes to immigration and making sure that the community has that information. So a lot of good work besides bills that is happening, but also making sure that the community has the right and correct information in regards to, a lot of, just issues that are coming up and that the community is dealing with.
And it's very important that you bring that up, because that's been a very hot topic lately of immigration, and just even residents knowing what are their rights, what are they able to do and what are they not. Do you have any resources that you could share with the community for individuals who are maybe afraid or don't know who to go to and just need a resource?
Yeah, great question. So I believe it was it last month? I had an immigration forum in partnership with, Hennepin County attorney, and then as well as AG Keith Allison, and then immigration lawyers as well. So we recorded that session on purpose to make sure that it is available for the community to tap into. So I would encourage, there's a lot of resources out here. There's organizations like Minnesota Immigration Legal Aid. Is an organization that I tap into every single day when somebody reaches out to my office to ask about resources. So if anybody has any questions around immigration, please reach out to my office. We have those resources readily available. And there's an organization that has created like I wish I knew we were talking about immigration. I could have brought it with me, but it's a small card, like a business card, that literally tells you exactly what to do, what not to do, how to present yourself, and so forth. That is just super straightforward and is clear on what the reality of the situation is and what you're able to do. So yes, anybody who has questions about immigration, please reach out to my office and we'll be more than happy to share those resources.
Yeah, I also know there's a virtual meeting that's coming up. I believe it's on March 30th now, of Know Your Rights, held by Minnesota Legal Aid. So it's good that you mentioned that, because there are a lot of resources out here, and some people don't know what they have authority to say and what they don't. So it's important that people know that. Kind of circling back to the funding, with our current higher administration and with the federal funding and just kind of a lot of funding being cut in many different areas, are there any new initiatives to prioritize a push for funding for education? Because the Minnesota Department, I mean, not the Minnesota, but the federal education department being defunded, and also some healthcare outlets as well. What are you doing at the Capitol to make a stop for that?
Yeah, that is a loaded question, and the reason why I say that, as a freshman coming in, so I thought I had that energy to go in and change the world. But then I got in, and the reality set in, and for most of you, that it's a budget year, so the priority is to make sure that, we pass a balanced budget here for the people of the state of Minnesota. And so when we talk about new initiatives, I'm going to be honest with you. Right now, there's just a lot of priorities that we need to target, and a lot of these priorities is work that has been done over the last couple of years. And if you look at the governor's budget too, the forecast is not very favorable in regards to new initiative. So right now, honestly, I am focused on a work that has already was started that needs to be completed, and making sure that we protect and maintain the hard work, especially the legislator passed, especially on the Democrat side, that passed the last 2 years including family paid leave, Minnesota driver's license for all of these critical issues and legislative pieces that were passed. My goal is to be a part of that fighting team that champions to maintain those critical pieces in place, those critical policy pieces in place.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so kind of now mentioning that, you know, what are some steps or some plans that you ensure to take to get community voices, especially underrepresented communities' voices heard at the Capitol? I remember a couple months ago, there was an event where some demographics were being mentioned of like, there's only a 0.% of African or Black individual dollars that or communities are not being represented. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that, of how are our communities that are underrepresented going to be represented at the Capitol?
Yeah, I love that question, and that is one of those questions that is rooted in my why. Why did I decide to run for office? It's because I truly believe that representation matters.
Yes.
When you have everybody at the table, then your policies reflect the people that you serve. And so it's unfortunate that it took 160 plus years to finally get the first a Black woman into the Minnesota Senate last election cycle. And if you look at the House, people of color, especially legislators of color, we have a long way to go. In terms of representation, but I am proud to, you know, say that the number that of the Posse Caucus that we have right now has definitely come a long way. We started out with 1 or 2, and now we are looking at, you know, I think 10 or 11, close to 15 now. And it's just a testament of how far Minnesota has come as a state. And then also, it just reminds us that, you know, we have a long way to go as well in mobilizing around, you know, candidates of different perspectives, different backgrounds. And for me, I'm very intentional in my making sure that my voice is heard, bringing the voice of the community to the table, like you said, right? And so that's why I love having conversations like this, to engage the community. I am very intentional, especially on Fridays, where I have told my team at the Capitol that I will be in my constituent, in my district, you know, meeting with folks and meeting with the community to talk about, first of all, what's going on at the Capitol, and also how to get involved. I think the biggest hurdle, especially for, you know, the population of my district that has not been represented at the Capitol, is that, you know, we as leaders haven't done a good job of creating or providing or making sure that we are communicating the value or what's going on at the Capitol and how folks can get involved. If you don't know how to get involved, you know what, you're not going to go out of your way to figure it out. Right. So I think that it's important for elected officials to create opportunities where their constituencies know what's going on, how to get involved, and what value that brings them. And so I am intentional about, you know, putting out a bi-weekly newsletter to my constituency to tell them, hey, the last 2 weeks, this is what happened. I danced this bill to the hopper, and that's, apparently that's a thing for me now. That's what I'm known for. Yeah. And then also, I'm very intentional about mentorship. I am a product of, you know, somebody who benefited from being mentored. And so right now, because of where we are at the legislative session, I don't have time to invest in really mapping out how executing my mentorship idea that I came with. But I'm excited about once the session has ended in May, hopefully if we don't have a special session, I definitely want to implement my mentorship program that I have drafted, and then also get young people involved. I think the key to a sustainable society is getting young people involved at an early age, to introduce them to, you know, this space so that they know exactly what is happening and spark their interest, and then provide them opportunities to engage.
Yeah, and you know, since you mentioned that, is it bi-weekly newsletter?
Yes.
So for someone who'd be interested in looking for that, where could they, is that open for the public, or is that,
absolutely,
where can they find that?
It's on the, you know, it's on my profile on the House.
Oh.
All that stuff is public.
Okay.
So if you go to the House and you look up member and you come to my name and you click on there, you should be able to see all of the bi-weekly newsletters that I've put out so far.
Okay, well, good to know.
And it sounds like there's an opportunity for me to kind of, you know, bring that bi-weekly to the studios here.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. That would be a great way to even vocalize it out and bring even members of our community in.
Absolutely.
And so kind of going back to the, if you're not interested, you wouldn't be inclined to know really what's going on or how to be involved in your communities. What would you give as a point of advice for someone who maybe is trying to get in or has tried other avenues of trying to vocalize themselves but just hasn't really hit the nail yet?
Yeah, you remind me of the reason why I decided to run. I remember when this was a couple of years ago when I was doing a lot of community work, advocacy around housing, healthcare, education, public safety within this community, the Brooklyns. And I found myself being dismissed in terms of, you know, being heard with our elected officials. And for me, you know, I was intentional about trying to figure out, you know, why am I not being heard? And I think what did it for me was the fact that I came to a realization of like, wait a second, if I'm not being heard, I'm gonna run. Yeah. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm gonna run and we're gonna figure it out. But to answer your question, I think as elected officials, we have a mandate to our communities to go to them and tell them, hey, this is how you can know what's going on. Being intentional about, you know, holding town hall meetings, being available. Personally, I have an open door policy in my office where, you know, if you're a constituency of mine, or if not, you know, and if you have a question, if I don't know it, I'll find an answer for you. And then also I want to put it back to the community. You know, we also have to take part in our democracy. You know, no one person can, you know, fight for democracy like you can. So I want to encourage our community too to take that initiative to also ask, you know, come to the Capitol, reach out to your representatives and your elected officials and ask questions. Get involved in your city council, get involved in your local, you know, your local government. Because I think that it's not just a one-way, you know, track. It has to be a two-way street here. That's where, true. You know, as elected officials, we come out, we are engaged with our community, and then also I would hope that our community would take that initiative to also take that initiative to educate themselves. If they have questions, reach out, be intentional about really engaging in this political process.
That is so true. Yeah. And you know, you did kind of touch into my next question a little bit about the town halls. You know, there's always city, state decisions that are being made, and once they're proposed or shown to people, people are like, hey, I wasn't in the decision of this, or I didn't know this was going on. Are there any upcoming town hall meetings that anyone in the city of Brooklyn Park or Osseo can, or even at the Capitol, that anyone can tune into to learn more of decisions that are being made in the state or in their local cities?
Yeah, so especially for Senate District 38 with Senator Susan Pott and my counterpart, Representative Samantha Vang, we are planning on having a joint town hall here, I believe, in the next month or so. I need to confirm that. But I will be, personally for Senate District 38A, there's a couple of events that I want to host, one of them around housing dialogue. Huntington, for example, is in my district, yes, right? Yes. And so I have been involved with, you know, figuring out a solution to Huntington, and that's a very complex solution. There's a lot of key stakeholders involved. But I was at City Hall yesterday, I believe, when the City Council was debating whether or not to cancel the debt for Aon and so forth and so forth. So needless to say, you know, I'm working with a couple of organizations to hold a town hall, not necessarily a town hall meeting, but like just a conversation, a table conversation around housing and specifically Huntington, providing an opportunity for residents in Huntington to voice their frustrations and really express, you know, how they're feeling about this whole situation, because as a resident, they're the ones who are going through it. The rest of us are just coming in saying, hey, we're trying to solve a problem, right? But we need to make sure that their voices are at the table and that the solutions that we're coming up with make sense. So there's a couple of events that I'm working on, you know, if anything else, I can send it to you and you can put it out there. But, you know, you will see them on my official House of Representatives page, as well as my socials too, so that the community knows. And obviously, I'll be communicating to community organizations and community leaders and influencers to get the word out, just like I did with the immigration forum that we held about a month ago.
Yeah, and that's very important and nice to mention that you've mentioned that as well, because there has been a lot of different things going on at that complex, and you know, even putting residents at the forefront because they're the ones who are living in it is very important. So that is great work, and I actually look forward to that. I will be there.
Oh, good.
So another question, kind of to circle up or to put everything together, is like, while you do your work at the Capitol, there obviously will be, kind of like how you mentioned, you used to go to town hall meetings and wonder, why isn't my voice being heard? What are some tensions or pushback that you receive, or like that you are anticipating to get, and how do you plan to still storm through it?
I mean, we're talking about politics. There's always going to be pushback. It's give and take.
Yeah.
And in this world of politics, the word compromise is definitely something that, you know, we need to practice more. And so for me, I am rooted in my community and the needs of my community. And so as long as, you know, I'm rooted in my why as to why I decided to go into this, I'm going to stand on that. But also at the same time, too, I am somebody who truly believes in extending grace, giving, you know, somebody an opportunity to just have a dialogue. And so ever since getting elected, the first day of orientation, November 7th, my whole intention was to not only know my side of the aisle, you know, my fellow Democrat legislators, but also on the other side of the aisle. You know, some of my really good friends are, you know, folks from the other side of the aisle, which I am truly grateful for, because at the end of the day, you know, if you remember, in November, the people of Minnesota voted for a tied house. And yesterday, I believe yesterday, the 67th member of the Minnesota House of Representatives was now finally sworn in, bringing us officially to 67-67.
Yes.
And so that means that the people of Minnesota expect us to work together, because no bill will pass without a bipartisan support. You know, so that is forcing a lot of us to go outside of our comfort zone and really create relationships and partnerships, genuine relationships and partnerships with the other side of the aisle. And I have been very intentional about it. I have had the really, truly privilege of getting to know some amazing folks on the other side of the aisle that have co-authored some of my bills. And so I'm excited to, you know, continue working on those relationships, because I truly believe that, you know, relationships and collaboration is key to getting anything done right now in the Minnesota House of Representatives.
So true.
Whether we like it or not, we have to get along,
Yes.
and especially with the budget on the line, and make sure that we work together to get things done for the people who elected us.
Right. I mean, you don't have to like each other, you just got to get
We
the
don't.
work done.
Exactly.
So true. So kind of just to conclude a little bit, what is a piece of advice that you would give to our viewers, or a young Kenyan girl who aspires to be in a leadership role? You made history, and kind of you've been in some uncomfortable positions, I would assume. And so what is a word of advice that you'd give to our audience of a Kenyan girl who aspires to be in a leadership role?
I love that question, because not a lot of us are in this space. I'm the first. And like our Vice President Kamala Harris said, I will not be the last, and I hope I'm not the last. And I am intentional about creating pathways for a young Kenyan girl to step into this space. I love that you're here doing this. I don't remember CCX having anybody that looked like me, that talked my language, you know, be a host. And so here you are, you're also paving that way for other young, you know, Kenyan girls to step in. Not only that, just you know, girls from, you know, marginalized communities, BIPOC communities who don't have the luxury of being exposed. So for that specific question, I would say, you know, step into your power. You know who you are, know your craft very well, you know, and stay true to your values, be true to your voice. And then, you know that you belong and that it won't be easy. You know, being a black woman in America, you know, I had to fight for everything that I have and how far I've gotten. I had to work twice as hard. And so don't be afraid to work hard, because in due time, you know, you will get the results that you see. And if you don't get the results that you see at the moment, believe me, they will come in due time. So be consistent and be honest, be a person of integrity, transparency, and be genuine in your dealings, you know. And again, don't be afraid to speak up, because guess what? Your voice is needed. There is plenty of space for us to be in this. And I'm excited to lead that charge in creating that space for, you know, a young girl who is growing up now can walk through those doors without having to deal with the challenges that I had to deal with. Yeah,
and it's very inspirational that you say that, because even when you won, it was like a victory. And, you know, just seeing like, oh, that's another Kenyan woman, you know, like if she can do it, we can too. So it's very motivational. So now to conclude, so CCX Media is community media, community television, and just a question about long-term funding. I know that you're part of the HF 1740 that provides a temporary relief for community media, but what long-term funding solutions do you envision for sustaining PEG television access as a resource for underrepresented communities?
Yeah, I'm excited to sign on to House File 1740. When I talked to your team that came to the Capitol on, you know, Community Media Day, I believe at the Capitol they called it.
I didn't know that was a day.
Yes, there's a lot of at the Capitol days happening. Okay. So I would love for you to come down to and just check it out. Yes, although that specific bill really just, I call it a Band-Aid bill, honestly. You know, we're putting a Band-Aid on the current issues that we see, especially in, you know, small community-based media stations like CCX that is doing, by the way, an amazing job. We were just talking earlier about how I grew up with CCX. Like I went to Cooper, and, you know, when I ran track, they covered, you know, my track meets and my basketball tournaments and whatnot. And so CCX has been a staple in our community. And it is a space where, you know, a lot of folks, not only in our community, but beyond, you know, share information and get their information. And we know that, you know, the work that you guys do here is legit, is trustworthy, is news that we can trust, especially in our community. And specifically how unique our community is, CCX has been able to really showcase each individual community spaces, and I'm so appreciative of that. So that's why it was a no-brainer for me to sign on to that bill. So you talk about sustainability in making sure that CCX is there for my kids and my grandkids, right? Long after I'm gone. I think it's important to continue to talk about the value that this, you know, media station provides to the community, and to tap into every and all possible opportunities to make sure that, you know, you do have the funding to continue such programming. And so from the state side, obviously this year is interesting in the sense that, you know, there's a lot going on with this being a very historic session. But I am trusting in the future we can look at, you know, additional funding, you know, long-term solutions. And I think that's what I talked with your team about. What would that look like when we talk about budgetary, you know, when we look at a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, what would that funding look like? And so continuing to have dialogue around that from all different aspects, not just from the state, because it's going to take the village to make sure that, you know, we maintain the amazing work that CCX is doing for future generations.
That is so true. And it's important even that you mentioned that because, you know, CCX is the community media. They're at the high schools capturing the football games. They're capturing student successes. What other news do you know doing that? So it's amazing, and funding would be phenomenal so then that work can continue for many more years to come. So now last question to conclude is CCX Media has a Create side of the studio that provides valuable media production resources, yet many in our Kenyan and African immigrant communities are unaware of this opportunity. How can we bridge this gap between CCX in our communities to encourage them to come into the studios, because this is a studio filled with so many great resources and a lot of expensive equipment that can be rented out for free if you are a resident. So how can we make that known?
So first of all, you guys have been just holding out on me, okay? How am I hearing this for the first time? You know, in all seriousness, this is incredible. This is the first time I'm hearing about it. So obviously that goes to show you that there's some work that needs to be done in terms of letting the community know. And I think especially within certain populations within the community, how we communicate matters. You know, we have to take into consideration culture. For example, in the Kenyan community, how do you communicate with the community? You don't just send a text message and say, hey, you know, something is here. You go talk to the, you know, to the community. You go to the elders and tell them, hey, something is here, and they communicate that to the community, right? And so now that I know this is available, obviously there's a couple of things that I can do from my end. Obviously I can advertise it on my, you know, state bi-weekly newsletter, right, that goes out. And then also I would love to tap into the leadership of this community. And letting them know the different groups that represent this community, and letting them know that this resource is here. And to be honest, I would be interested in maybe hosting a show. And I think by doing that, it just brings light into this, you know, space and what's possible in this space. And getting it out there. So I've already have a couple of ideas on how we could do that. I'm excited because I think when you open a space like this to the community, you will be amazed what comes out of it. You'll be amazed the amazing conversations, the story sharing, the ideas, the innovative ideas that comes out of it. And I'm excited to see what happens.
Well, thank you so much for coming on to the show tonight. For our viewers at home, thank you for tuning in, and have a great rest of your evening.